Good morning and welcome back to the workshop. In today's episode we will be setting up the guides on the bandsaw because they weren't particularly well aligned when it came, so we'll be making that ever so slightly better. First thing to do when opening a bandsaw, of course, is making sure it's unplugged. Now this does have little safety switches that will stop the power in the case it's open, and those will probably work fine, but I'm not going to trust them at all. And to start this off, what we're just going to do is just loosen everything off a bit, just so we can go back to essentially a zero, where everything's nice and loose, so that we can make all of the adjustments that we need to make, get everything in the right place, and hopefully, like I say, get a better cut. So blade's nice and loose. What we do need to do is just loosen up the bearings a bit, because those are going to move. This is all now nice and loose. It's all now nice and loose. We've got a little bit of play and everything. The first thing that we will do is to get the blade with the deepest parts of the gullet roughly in the center of the tire. Now I have noticed with this tire, I'll kind of preface everything with this, that there is somewhere on here a bit of glue squeeze out, and it seems to be around that point that there's a little rubbing or grinding sound with the blade. Now it may be nothing, it may be something. Maybe if someone that knows bandsaws a little bit better than me could let me know, that'd be great. But otherwise, all we're going to do is set the deepest parts of the gullet to roughly the center of the tire. Make sure that's still on at the top and the bottom. And then retension everything. Now the point to which we want to retension this is we should be able to tap the blade a tiny bit and get only a small amount of movement, certainly not anything like we have at the moment. So keep tightening, give it a little tap. And once we've got just a small amount of deflection, we know we're about there. I'd say that's about right. That should spin. But I don't know if you can hear So next is the thrust bearings, so the backwards and forwards motion. They want to be ever so slightly, maybe a millimetre or so behind the back of the blade, so that when we start putting a bit of pressure on the blade, pushes back into those bearings but doesn't go back too far. So that's this side bolt or side nut here for the top, which we need to just move ever so slightly. And if we can see in here, not really. We've got that's touching. See, it's not touching there. It is touching there. We just need to wiggle that back a bit. See if we can just see in there. Not really. So that's a mile off at the moment. You can see that huge gap. So we'll just loosen this. Give it a little nudge. And see how we're doing. That's far off, so what we're actually going to do is we'll keep this bit up. So that's not in the way of what we're trying to see. So we've got a long way to go. Doing this one-handed here. So we can barely see there that it's touching. And if we go around this side, we should see it moving when I turn the wheel. Just like that. So we just loosen it off a tiny bit. Gentle tap. Gentle tap. And it's still touching. Let's go again. Now we can hopefully see there is a tiny little gap there. Push these ones all the way in. Now one of them on the right, just the way that the bolt turns, will move ever so slightly out as I tighten it anyway. He says, and then it doesn't. We want that just millimetre or so, again, away, a tiny bit away from the blade, just so it's not spinning as the blade spins, but it will spin with a bit of pressure. So there, that one's not spinning. Let's see if we can get that to focus. Oh, my watch is out of battery. Trust me when I say it's not spinning. That's what spinning looks like. And we'll go again with the other one. So touching, move it out a fraction. Tighten that. And that too should not spin. And there's tiniest of gaps between those and the blade. And then we'll repeat that process for the bottom guides. So first is we'll make this touch. Move it back a bit, tighten that down. And this is what we've got the stubby for. Different kind of stubby. So tighten that down. And in here we can see that the bearing is not moving. And I can see, but it doesn't show very well on camera, there's the tiniest of gaps behind. Oops, I'm going to cut my fingers off. And then we'll do the same for the sideways or lateral, or what are these ones called? I don't know. I'm going to call them the sideways bearings. So again, we move it all the way in, move it a tiny, tiny, tiny bit out, shake it all about, tighten down, and that bearing should not move. And the same on this side. Tighten that down, and that bearing should not move. So all of the bearings should now be fine. Everything spins freely, everything's tightened. So we should now be able to switch it all on. Just close this back up. Close that. Close that. Everything's good. Plug in the power. Give us some juice. We're a bit strapped for power over this side of the workshop at the moment. I was planning to have a socket on this side of the wall, and I chose not to. And I don't know why I chose not to, but I'm regretting it already. Anyway, we should be able to turn on. So this bearing here is ever so slightly turning as the blade is going around with power. Ever so slightly. So we'll take the power off, unplug because safety. I have fingers. I want to keep all of my fingers. We'll just loosen that a tiny bit, give it a wiggle, tighten it down again. and try again. There we go. And now none of the bearings are moving while we're running the blade. Everything has been cinched down, so it should be nice and tight. So we can put the table back on, and then we'll just give it a quick pass just to make sure everything stays tight. If we push against it, the back bearings move, that kind of thing. So we're going to put the table back on first, which goes in this way. Put the insert plate back in. And same as before, we're going to do a dowel test. But this time we will drop the guard, put it under there, raise it up a tiny bit, lock that off. Quick test. I'm just going to so this one is actually turning. This bearing is actually turning when the guard is down, which means the guard is not going up and down perpendicular to the fence, or it's not going down parallel to the blade, it's actually going down at a slight angle, which is good, because that helps everything. But ignoring that, the back bearing here is not moving until we apply a little bit of pressure. I would say that we're done. Those cuts are a lot smoother than some that I've done. I've done some little rip cuts just to... They're a lot smoother than these ones. I did myself some rip cuts from some 6mm pine. They're quite jaggedy. Whereas these are a lot smoother now. Smoother at least than the last ones we did in the unboxing video. So that hopefully is now set up. Like I say, there's down here that bottom bearing does move ever so slightly when the guard is down. When the guard is higher, it doesn't, which means that it's not coming down parallel to the blade, or the blade is not parallel to the guide. And there is that slight grinding sound at the top of the wheel here, which I think is down to the glue squeeze out, but I don't know. If anybody has any ideas, do let me know, please. And that about wraps this one up. Thanks very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please drop a like, subscribe, all the usual stuff that people ask you to do. And I'll see you in the next one.